Raven Cross had consulted on security for 17 different facilities across 9 star systems, and they all had one thing in common. Somebody was always lying about what they actually did there. Today's lie was Xenobiological Research Station. She stepped off the transport into the Skirran facility expecting the usual corporate bullshit. Overpriced security audit, middle management trying to justify their budgets, maybe some industrial espionage concerns. Standard mercenary work for an ex-Alliance Special Forces operator who'd burned too many bridges to get honest employment. The facility was dead quiet. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red. No staff, no researchers, no maintenance crew. Just the lingering smell of fear and the kind of silence that meant everyone had left in a hurry. "Hello?" Raven called out, hand instinctively moving to her sidearm. "Anyone home?" Her boots echoed through empty corridors, lined with laboratory doors. Each room she checked showed signs of rapid evacuation: overturned chairs, abandoned experiments, personal items scattered like people had literally run for their lives. Then she heard it. Soft whimpering from the facility's secure wing. Children crying. Raven found them in Laboratory 16, behind reinforced glass designed to contain dangerous specimens. 5 Skirran cubs, couldn't have been more than toddlers in human terms, huddled together in a sterile examination room. Spotted fur matted with tears, wide eyes that held too much understanding for children who should have been playing, not imprisoned. The door controls were locked from the outside. The food dispensers were empty. Someone had left these kids to starve. "What the hell?" Raven muttered, overriding the lock with her contractor access codes. The cubs backed away when she entered, terrified but too weak to run. The smallest one, a female with distinctive white markings, made a sound that broke something in Raven's chest. Universal language of abandonment and fear. "Hey," Raven said softly, hands visible and empty. "I'm not going to hurt you." She activated her universal translator. "Where are your parents?" "Gone," whispered the white-marked cub in broken standard. "Scientists took pack mothers. Said cubs were contaminated. Said we were mistakes." Raven felt ice form in her stomach. "Contaminated with what?" "Don't know. They poked us with needles. Made us sick. Then everyone left. Illegal genetic experiments. Had to be. Some corporate nightmare involving sentient children as test subjects. The kind of horror show that explained why everyone had evacuated when the authorities came sniffing around." Raven's communication device buzzed. Incoming ships. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. She checked the scope. Alliance military vessels. Fast attack configuration. Shit! More signals. Ground forces deploying. Combat dropships heading directly for the facility. This wasn't a rescue mission. Alliance military didn't send assault teams for humanitarian aid. They sent them to eliminate evidence. Raven grabbed the nearest cub, the white-marked female, and started herding the others toward the facility's panic room. "Move, kids! Now!" "What's happening?" the cub asked. "Nap time's over," Raven said grimly, "and the babysitter just got really pissed off." The panic room was standard corporate paranoia. Reinforced walls, independent life support, enough supplies for a siege. Raven sealed the blast doors and activated the facility's security protocols just as the first Alliance dropship landed in the courtyard. Through external feeds, she watched soldiers deploy with the precision of a termination squad. Full combat gear. Heavy weapons. Orders that probably didn't include rescue the children. Her communication device crackled. "Facility personnel, this is Major Voss, Alliance Special Operations. Surrender all biological specimens for immediate disposal." Raven keyed her mic. "This is Contractor Cross. I've got 5 scared kids in here. What's your actual mission, Major?" "Elimination of contaminated test subjects before classified research becomes public. Stand down and evacuate immediately." "Contaminated?" "They're children. They're biological weapons. Skirran genetic enhancement program gone wrong. Facility was ordered to terminate subjects before evacuation." Raven looked at the 5 cubs huddled behind her, at their terrified faces and trembling hands, at the way they'd instinctively moved to protect each other. Biological weapons. Right. Counteroffer, Major, Raven said into her mic. You and your death squad can go straight to hell. She cut the channel and started activating the facility's defensive systems, motion detectors, automated barriers, emergency lockdown protocols designed to keep dangerous specimens contained. Today, they'd keep dangerous soldiers out. What are you doing? Asked the white-marked cub. Protecting my kids, Raven said, surprising herself with how naturally the words came. Anyone wants to hurt you, they go through me first. The cubs moved closer to her, seeking warmth and protection from the human who'd become their shield against the galaxy's worst impulses. Outside, Major Voss was coordinating his assault teams. 12 soldiers against 1 contractor and 5 children. Should have been simple. He had no idea what humans were capable of when their protective instincts kicked in. The first breach team hit the outer security door with shaped charges. Raven watched them advance through internal feeds, cataloging weapons and movement patterns with the automatic assessment of a predator evaluating prey. Stay back, she told the cubs, checking her weapon. Military-grade plasma rifle. Enough ammunition for a small war. Cover your ears. The soldiers moved with professional competence through corridors they expected to be empty, past laboratories, through administrative sections, toward the facility's secure wing where sensors showed life signs. They had no idea they were walking into a kill box designed by someone who'd spent 8 years teaching Alliance Special Forces how to breach hostile facilities. The first soldier through the security checkpoint triggered Raven's trap. Automated plasma turrets activated, emergency barriers slammed down. Atmospheric controls vented oxygen from sealed sections. Screams echoed through the facility's speakers. What was that? Whispered one of the cubs. Bad people learning why you don't threaten children around humans, Raven said calmly. 3 soldiers down. 9 to go. Her communication device buzzed with frantic chatter from the assault team. Casualties, equipment failures, confusion about hostile defensive systems. Contractor Cross, Major Voss called over facility speakers. Surrender now or we'll breach with heavy weapons. Try it, Raven replied, but those kids are under my protection. Anyone who wants them better be ready to die for the privilege. The cubs were watching her with something between terror and awe. Their rescuer had become something else. Apex predator defending her young. Are you going to hurt them? The white-marked cub asked. Raven looked at 5 children who'd been abandoned, experimented on, and marked for execution by the civilized galaxy. Yeah, sweetheart, she said softly. I'm going to hurt them very badly. The facility's AI chose that moment to activate its emergency broadcast system. Every word, every action, every moment of Alliance soldiers trying to murder children was being transmitted across galactic networks. The whole galaxy was about to learn what happened when you made a human choose between following orders and protecting kids. Spoiler alert, the kids won. Every time. Once upon a time, Raven whispered to the 5 cubs huddled in the panic room. There was a very bad wolf who thought he could hurt little children. She was checking ammunition while telling the story, voice steady and soothing, despite the plasma fire echoing through the facility's corridors. What happened to the wolf? Asked the white-marked cub, eyes wide with fear and fascination. The wolf met a human, Raven said, sliding a fresh power cell into her rifle. And humans don't like bullies. Through the facility's internal feeds, she watched Major Voss coordinate his remaining soldiers. 6 left after her welcoming committee. They were moving more carefully now, scanning for traps, using proper breach protocols. Professional paranoia. Good. It would make this more interesting. Stay here, Raven told the cubs. The panic room is safe. I'll be back in 20 minutes. Where are you going? The smallest cub whispered. To finish the story. Raven unsealed the blast door and stepped into the corridor. The facility's emergency lighting cast everything in blood-red shadows. Perfect hunting conditions for someone who'd spent 8 years teaching Alliance Special Forces how to clear hostile installations. She moved through the facility like a ghost, using maintenance shafts and service corridors the soldiers didn't know existed. Her boots made no sound. Her breathing was controlled. She was what military instructors called a force multiplier. One person who could neutralize an entire squad through superior knowledge and absolute commitment to the mission. Today's mission: protect the kids. Everything else was negotiable. The first soldier she found was checking Laboratory 12, weapon raised, nervous sweat visible on his face through the visor. Raven watched him from the ventilation shaft above, calculating angles and timing. Poor bastard had no idea death was 6 feet over his head. She dropped through the ceiling like a spider, silent, efficient. By the time his squad leader called for a status report, Laboratory 12 was down 1 soldier and up 1 expertly concealed corpse. Jenkins, report. Static. Jenkins, respond. Raven keyed Jenkins's communicator. Jenkins can't come to the radio right now. He's taking a dirt nap. Who is this? This is the babysitter. And you just made me very unhappy. She was already moving to her next position. The soldiers were clustering together now, spooked by their missing teammate. Basic tactical error. Made them easier targets for someone who knew every blind spot in the facility. Laboratory 15. 2 soldiers, backs to the door, checking specimen containers. Raven rigged a plasma conduit to overload. Timed explosion. When the soldiers investigated the electrical failure in the next room, the lab's containment systems would vent superheated gas directly into their position. Creative problem solving. Her old instructor would have been proud. The explosion echoed through the facility. Screams followed. Then silence. What the hell is happening out there? Major Voss demanded over communications. Science, Raven replied cheerfully. Specifically a practical demonstration of why you don't threaten children around humans. She was back in the panic room before the smoke cleared, sealing the blast door behind her. The cubs looked up as she entered, relief flooding their small faces. Is the story over? The white-marked cub asked. Not yet, sweetheart. The wolf is still being stubborn. Through external feeds, she watched reinforcements drop from orbit. More soldiers, heavy weapons. Alliance command was escalating rather than withdrawing. Interesting choice. Morally bankrupt, tactically sound, politically catastrophic. Because the facility's AI was still broadcasting everything. Every word. Every action. Every moment of trained soldiers hunting children while a human protected them. The galactic networks were going insane. Emergency council sessions, diplomatic protests, public outrage spreading across 200 worlds as citizens watched Alliance forces trying to murder alien toddlers. Are more bad people coming? One of the cubs asked. Yeah, but don't worry. I've got an idea. Raven started pulling laboratory equipment from storage lockers, chemical compounds, experimental materials, prototype weapons that weren't supposed to exist. The cubs watched with fascination as their protector began assembling devices that would make military engineers weep with envy. What are those? The white-marked cub asked. Party favors, Raven said. Want to help? The cubs nodded eagerly. Anything was better than cowering in the dark. She taught them to sort components while she worked. Simple tasks, color coordination, size matching. The kind of busy work that kept children calm during crisis situations. Except these children were learning how to build improvised explosive devices while their human guardian explained the principles of tactical defense. This goes here, Raven showed them, connecting power cells to detonation circuits. And this creates a really big boom that stops bad people from hurting kids. The cubs absorbed every lesson with the focused attention of children learning survival skills from their pack leader. When Raven demonstrated proper throwing technique for concussion grenades, they mimicked her movements with alarming accuracy. Remember, she told them, these are only for emergencies, and only if someone is trying to hurt children. Like the wolf soldiers? The white-marked cub asked. Exactly like the wolf soldiers. The reinforcements breached the facility's outer defenses with military efficiency. 12 fresh soldiers led by a captain who'd clearly been briefed on the casualties from the first wave. They moved through the corridors with proper caution, checking every room, scanning for traps, maintaining communication discipline. Professional competence. Raven respected that, even while she prepared to kill them all. The captain found the first surprise in Laboratory 8, a motion-activated device that filled the room with experimental neural toxin, non-lethal, but incapacitating. The soldier would live, but he'd spend the next week unable to remember his own name. "Contact," the captain called. "Booby traps. Advance with extreme caution." Too late. Raven had turned the entire facility into a death trap designed by someone who knew exactly how military breach teams operated. Pressure plates triggered ceiling collapses. Door sensors activated directed energy bursts. Emergency lighting flickered in patterns that induced disorientation in most humanoid species. The soldiers advanced anyway. Credit where due. They had discipline. But discipline only went so far when facing someone who'd written the tactical manual they were using. By the time they reached the secure wing, the captain had lost 8 of his 12 soldiers to Raven's educational obstacles. The remaining 4 were nervous, exhausted, and starting to question whether this mission was worth the casualty rate. "Contractor Cross," the captain called through the facility's speakers. "This is Captain Reynolds. I'm authorized to offer you full immunity in exchange for surrender of the test subjects." Raven keyed the intercom. "Counteroffer, Captain. You and your remaining soldiers leave now, and I don't demonstrate why humans are apex predators. We have our orders. And I have 5 kids to protect. Your orders don't trump basic human decency." The cubs were pressed against her, listening to the exchange with the focused attention of children learning about the adult world's capacity for cruelty. "The subjects are contaminated biological weapons," Reynolds continued. "They pose a threat to galactic security." Raven looked down at 5 terrified toddlers who'd spent the last hour learning to sort explosive components and mimic tactical movements. "You know what, Captain? You might be right about that." She opened the panic room's blast door and stepped into the corridor. The cubs followed her, moving in the coordinated pattern she'd unconsciously taught them, while explaining defensive tactics. Captain Reynolds and his 3 surviving soldiers were advancing down the main corridor, weapons raised, when they encountered their targets. 1 human woman. 5 alien children. All of them looking at the soldiers with expressions that made trained killers suddenly very nervous. "Surrender the subjects," Reynolds ordered. "These are my kids," Raven said calmly. "Anyone who wants to hurt them can try going through me." The white-marked cub stepped forward. In her small hands was one of the improvised devices Raven had built. Her throwing stance was textbook perfect. "Pack Mother taught us about bad wolves," the cub said in careful standard. The other cubs spread out behind Raven, each carrying their own party favors. 5 alien toddlers who'd learned human tactical doctrine in the span of 2 hours. Captain Reynolds stared at the scene. Armed soldiers facing off against a human, and 5 children who'd somehow become a coordinated combat unit. "What the hell have you done to them?" he whispered. Raven smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "I taught them that monsters are real," she said. "And that sometimes you have to become a bigger monster to protect the people you love." The facility's AI was broadcasting everything. Every word. Every gesture. Every moment of Alliance soldiers confronting children who'd learned to fight back. Across the galaxy, 200 species watched human protective instincts turn alien cubs into something unprecedented. And somewhere in Alliance Command, very senior officers realized they'd just created the worst public relations disaster in galactic history. The standoff lasted exactly 37 seconds before Captain Reynolds made the intelligent choice. "Stand down," he ordered his remaining soldiers. "All units, fall back to extraction point." "Sir?" one soldier asked, weapons still trained on the armed cubs. "Our orders were?" "Our orders didn't include fighting children with explosives," Reynolds snapped. "Move out. Now." Raven watched the soldiers retreat through the facility's corridors, the cubs maintaining formation around her like a perfectly coordinated pack. The white-marked cub still held her improvised grenade, small fingers wrapped around the trigger with disturbing competence. "Pack Mother," she whispered. "Are the bad wolves gone?" "For now, sweetheart." Raven checked her communication device. The galactic networks were exploding with activity. "But I think we're about to have visitors." The facility's AI continued broadcasting everything. 24 billion viewers, and counting across 300 worlds, all watching one human woman protect 5 alien children from military execution squads. The headlines wrote themselves, "Human fights army to save alien cubs." Contractor turns facility into death trap for child killers. Watch. Human teaches alien toddlers combat tactics. Public opinion shifted like a landslide. Protests erupted on Alliance worlds. Diplomatic channels flooded with demands for explanation. 3 species threatened to withdraw from military cooperation agreements. And somewhere in the depths of space, very powerful people were having very angry conversations about damage control. Raven's communication device buzzed. Incoming transmission. High priority. Alliance command. "Contractor Cross," came a voice that could have belonged to a glacier. "This is Admiral Caney. You've created quite a situation. I protected children from murder squads. If that's a situation, your organization has bigger problems than my security consultation. The test subjects are classified biological weapons. Their elimination was necessary for galactic security." Raven looked at the cubs, who were listening to the conversation with the focused attention of children learning about adult hypocrisy. "They're kids," she said simply. "They're genetically enhanced predators designed for military application. The Skirran government created them as living weapons. The Skirran government can kiss my ass. These are children who were abandoned and marked for execution. They're under my protection now." Silence on the channel. Then, "Contractor Cross, we're prepared to offer you full pardons and significant compensation in exchange for surrender of the subjects. Counteroffer. You leave us alone and I don't upload the security footage showing your soldiers trying to murder toddlers. You're in no position to negotiate. We have your location. We have superior firepower. And we have legal authority to retrieve classified biological materials." Raven smiled at the communication device. "Admiral, you have no idea what position I'm in." She gestured to the cubs, who immediately spread out in defensive formation. 5 alien children moving with the coordinated precision of trained soldiers. "You see, I've been teaching my kids about human tactical doctrine. Want to know what they've learned?" The white-marked cub stepped forward. "Humans are persistence hunters," she said in careful standard. "They don't give up. They don't retreat. They protect their pack no matter what." Another cub added, "Humans fight dirty when protecting young. They use tools. They set traps. They become apex predators." And, the smallest cub contributed, "Humans teach their young to fight back against monsters." Admiral Caney's voice had gone very quiet. "What have you done to them?" "I taught them to survive," Raven said. "Specifically, to survive humans who think killing children is acceptable military policy." The transmission cut off. But Raven knew it wasn't over. The Alliance would try again. Different approach. More resources. Political pressure instead of direct force. They arrived 6 hours later. Not soldiers this time, diplomats, Skirran government officials, child welfare specialists from 3 different species, a whole parade of authority figures claiming jurisdiction over 5 alien cubs who'd bonded with a human. "Miss Cross," said Ambassador Thane, a Quillix diplomat whose tentacles writhed with bureaucratic authority. "We're here to discuss the return of the Skirran juveniles to appropriate care." "They're in appropriate care," Raven replied. The cubs were arranged around her in protective formation, still clutching improvised weapons with disturbing familiarity. "You're a human mercenary with no legal standing regarding alien children," pointed out Dr. Velek, the Skirran child welfare specialist. "These cubs require species-appropriate nurturing and socialization. They require not being murdered by military death squads. I'm providing that service. The cubs belong with their own kind," Velek continued. "We have proper facilities, trained caretakers, educational programs designed for Skirran development." The white-marked cub looked up at Raven. "Pack Mother, do we have to go?" "Not if you don't want to, sweetheart. We want to stay with you." Ambassador Thane's tentacles twitched with frustration. "The children don't understand the situation. They've been traumatized and are exhibiting inappropriate attachment responses." "Inappropriate according to who?" Raven asked. "According to established xenopsychological principles regarding interspecies bonding," Dr. Velek said. "Skirran cubs cannot form proper pack bonds with humans. It's biologically impossible." The cubs exchanged glances. Some wordless communication passed between them. Then they moved. 5 alien children, acting with perfect coordination, surrounded the Skirran doctor and began exhibiting behavioral patterns that made the assembled diplomats step backward in alarm. Predator stances, coordinated positioning, the kind of tactical awareness that shouldn't exist in toddlers. "Pack Mother is our alpha," the white-marked cub announced. "We choose our pack, not government, not specialists. Pack Mother." Dr. Velik stared at the cubs with growing horror. "What have you taught them?" "Survival," Raven said calmly. "Self-defense. Basic tactical awareness. How to recognize threats to pack structure. You've turned them into weapons. I've turned them into children who won't be victims. There's a difference." The diplomatic delegation was getting nervous. 5 alien cubs were displaying behavioral modifications that shouldn't be possible. Human influence on non-human development patterns. Cross-species tactical knowledge transfer. The kind of thing that kept xenobiologists awake at night. "This is unprecedented," muttered Dr. Hess, a human child psychologist who'd been brought in as a neutral observer. "Interspecies imprinting at this level shouldn't be possible." "Maybe your theories are wrong," Raven suggested. "Or maybe," Ambassador Thane said grimly, "humans are more dangerous than we realized." That's when the facility's alarms started screaming again. More ships dropping out of hyperspace, military configuration, Alliance forces deploying for what looked like a full assault. Raven checked the tactical display. 12 assault ships, 200 soldiers, heavy weapons, orbital bombardment capability. "Well," she said to the assembled diplomats, "looks like talking time is over." The cubs immediately shifted into defensive positions, small hands gripping their improvised weapons with practiced ease. "Pack Mother," the white-marked cub asked, "do we fight?" Raven looked at 5 alien children who'd learned human tactical doctrine in the span of hours, who'd chosen her as their protector despite every biological and psychological principle that said it was impossible, who were ready to fight an army because that's what their human pack mother had taught them to do. "Yeah, sweetheart," Raven said, checking her weapon. "We fight." The diplomatic delegation scrambled for the exit as the facility's defensive systems activated once again. But this time, Raven wasn't fighting alone. She had backup. 5 alien cubs who'd learned the most important lesson humans could teach. When someone threatens your family, you make them regret it. The galaxy was about to discover why evolution had made humans persistence hunters, and why threatening human-bonded young was the worst tactical decision any species could make. 6 months after the Skirran facility incident, Raven Cross stood in her apartment watching 5 alien teenagers destroy her furniture through what they called tactical exercises. "Zira, put your brother down," she said without looking up from her communication device. "We talked about using submissions holds on family members." The white-marked Skirran, now grown tall and lean with adolescent muscle, released her smaller packmate with obvious reluctance. He started it by questioning pack hierarchy. "I didn't question anything," protested Crix, rubbing his throat. "I just said your throwing technique needed work." "My throwing technique put 12 Alliance soldiers in medical bay. That was 6 months ago. You're getting sloppy." They squared off again, predatory instincts warring with human-taught discipline. Raven's cubs had grown into something the galaxy had never seen before. Alien teenagers with human tactical training and an absolute devotion to their chosen pack mother. The communication device in Raven's hand buzzed with an incoming priority message. Galactic Protection Services. Official seal. The kind of message that usually meant someone, somewhere, was about to have a very bad day. "Miss Cross," came the voice of Director Yan, a hegemony official who'd built his career on cleaning up interspecies incidents. "We have a situation requiring your particular expertise." "I'm retired from situations," Raven said, watching her cubs practice combat formations in her living room. "I'm in the child-rearing business now." "The situation involves children." Raven's attention sharpened. "What kind of children?" "Zephyrian juveniles. The hegemony military has classified them as enemy combatants in the current border conflict. They're planning mass elimination to prevent future insurgency." Ice formed in Raven's chest. How many children? 3,000. Ages 2 to 15. Scheduled for termination in 72 hours. Raven looked at her cubs, who'd stopped their sparring to listen to the conversation, with the focused attention of children learning about the adult world's capacity for cruelty. Pack mother, Zira said quietly. Are their cubs in danger? Yeah, sweetheart. Lots of cubs. The 5 teenagers exchanged glances. Some wordless communication passed between them. Pack dynamics Raven had learned to recognize but never fully understand. We help, Crick said simply. This isn't your fight, Raven told them. These aren't your people. Cubs are cubs, Zira replied with the absolute certainty of someone who'd learned moral principles from a human. Pack protects cubs, all cubs. Director Yan was still speaking through the communicator. Miss Cross, we need someone with your unique skill set. Someone who understands both human protective responses and alien psychology. You need someone crazy enough to fight armies for children who aren't their species, Raven corrected. Yes, exactly that. Raven looked at her impossible family. 5 alien teenagers who'd learned human values so completely, they were willing to die for principles that weren't even biologically theirs. Transport leaves in 6 hours, she said. We'll be ready. We, Director Yan asked. My kids and I, package deal. Miss Cross, this is a military operation. We can't authorize minors. These minors took down a full Alliance assault team when they were toddlers. Now they're teenagers with 6 months of advanced tactical training. Trust me, Director. You want them on your side. The transport to the Zephyrian border was a converted cargo hauler filled with human volunteers, alien diplomats, and enough military hardware to level a small moon. But the most dangerous passengers were 6 beings sitting in the corner. 1 human woman and 5 alien teenagers who moved with the coordinated precision of a pack predator. Other species military advisors watched them with fascination and growing unease. The cubs, now calling themselves Raven's Pack, demonstrated tactical capabilities that shouldn't exist in adolescence. Combat formations learned by mimicking their human pack mother. Weapons proficiency that came from months of educational playtime. Strategic thinking that blended human persistence hunting with alien predator instincts. They're children, whispered Colonel Hess, a human military observer. How are they more coordinated than trained soldiers? They learned from the best, Raven said simply. And they learned why it matters. The Zephyrian refugee camp was a study in controlled chaos. 3,000 children of various ages, species, and developmental stages, all marked for execution by military forces who'd decided genocide was easier than occupation. The cubs took one look at the terrified juveniles and went into full protective mode. Pack mother, Zira said, voice tight with controlled fury. Permission to engage enemy forces? Permission granted, Raven replied. Rules of engagement. Protect the children. Everything else is optional. What followed became known in military circles as the Zephyrian demonstration, a textbook example of how human protective instincts, when properly channeled through trained alien adolescents, could turn a hopeless situation into a strategic victory. The cubs moved through enemy positions like a coordinated hunting party, silent, efficient, absolutely ruthless when it came to threats against young. They disabled communication systems, sabotaged weapons, and eliminated sentries with the kind of professional competence that made career soldiers nervous. Raven coordinated from the center of the refugee camp, turning 3,000 terrified children into an organized evacuation while her cubs dismantled the hegemony's assault capabilities. How is this possible? Asked General Corps, watching the tactical displays as his entire operation fell apart. 5 teenagers are defeating my army. They're not teenagers, Raven explained over the communication channel. They're humans who happen to be alien. There's a difference. The evacuation succeeded with 0 casualties among the refugees. The hegemony military withdrawal was complete within 18 hours. And across the galaxy, xenobiologists began updating their theories about human influence on alien development patterns. Miss Cross, Director Yan said afterward, we'd like to offer you a permanent position, head of Interspecies Child Protection Services, full authority, unlimited resources. What's the job description? Prevent species from committing genocide against children. Use any means necessary. Raven looked at her cubs, who were teaching Zephyrian refugees basic self-defense techniques, with the patient enthusiasm of siblings sharing family knowledge. I accept, she said. But I choose my own team. Your cubs? My family. And anyone else who understands that some principles transcend species boundaries. 6 months later, Raven's operation had expanded to include 43 humans and over 200 alien adolescents, all trained in what xenopsychologists had dubbed applied parental instincts. They worked in coordinated teams across the galaxy, responding to threats against juvenile populations, with the kind of focused violence that made military planners recalculate their strategies. The cubs had become teenagers, the teenagers had become young adults, and the young adults were training the next generation of protectors in the fundamental human principle that children were non-negotiable. Packmother, Zira said one evening, reviewing mission reports while her own adopted cubs practiced formations in the background. Do you ever regret it? Regret what? Taking us in, changing your whole life, becoming responsible for half the galaxy's orphans. Raven looked around her expanded family. Human and alien faces. Different species, different backgrounds, united by the simple understanding that some things were worth fighting for. Yeah, sweetheart, she said. I regret it every day. Zira's expression fell. I regret that it took so long for the galaxy to figure out what humans knew instinctively, Raven continued. That protecting children isn't a species-specific response. It's what intelligent beings do when they want to call themselves civilized. The young Skirran smiled, an expression that would have terrified anyone who didn't understand that predators could choose to be protectors. Besides, Raven added, someone has to teach the universe that the scariest thing in the galaxy isn't a monster. What is it? A human with kids to protect. Outside, the latest class of human trainees was learning tactical doctrine from alien instructors who'd been raised by a human contractor with strong opinions about child welfare. The galaxy was still adjusting to its new normal, a universe where threatening children meant facing humans who'd taught other species that family transcended biology. And somewhere in the depths of space, former Admiral Caney was updating military doctrine with a single critical addendum. Under no circumstances should operations target juvenile populations within 50 light-years of human-bonded alien units. The footnote read simply, "Trust us on this one."